Currently, we have a pretty stubborn test that's failing. It's checking that a new signature is generated for the transaction after updating its input. However, even though the underlying code has been added to change the signature, the test is adamant that the transaction signature is still the same. Luckily, we have this test in place. It's highlighting a very important aspect to understand about JavaScript. Two references to the same object in JavaScript are always going to be treated as equal, even if the properties in that object has changed in one of the references. Now, this is best understood by actually diving into the concept and seeing it firsthand. So open up your browser and inspect the element. You're going to want to special click and then go to inspect and then view the console. I'll go ahead and clear this. All right. First up, let's declare a local constant called foo and set this to an object. All right. So note that foo is the reference, as in the variable, to the object. The variable foo is not the object itself. Rather, it's a variable that is pointing to the underlying object in JavaScript. The object itself is that thing on the right. That piece with the two curly braces is the object. Now we can make a reference to the reference. So bar is going to be pointing to foo. And the effect is that bar is now pointing to the same object. So if you go to foo, it's going to log that object. If you go to bar, it's going to log that object itself. So both output an empty object, a pair of curly braces, which is what foo was set to originally. However, these outputs aren't separate objects. They're the same underlying object. Think of it like this. Imagine that foo and bar are nicknames for your friend. This friend can have many nicknames, foo, bar, goo, zoo, whatever, even if those nicknames are really weird for a person. The point is that the underlying person for those nicknames is still the same, no matter what nickname you give him or her. Again, that person is still the same. Just because they have a new nickname doesn't mean a whole new person has been magically created. So this concept extends to variables that reference objects in JavaScript. To demonstrate this, let's set a property on the foo variable. We're going to say foo of a is equal to a. And as we log foo, we see that the object does contain an a key with an a value. But what about bar? Bar has the same output. After all, the object pointed to by foo changed. But we know that bar is pointing to the same underlying object. So this is the exact problem we're having when we update the output map. All right, let's check what's going on. First up, in the transaction.js file, we're calling update, and the hope is to generate a new signature by calling this createInput function. CreateInput does indeed call senderWallet.sign over again. So let's look at the wallet file. And if you look at the sign method, it's calling this.keyPair.sign, and it's doing a CryptoHash of the data, which in this case is going to be the output map. But as we've established, that output map is still going to be the same underlying object. Therefore, the generated hash is going to be the same. And because the hash is the same, the signature is going to be identical as well. So the issue lies in the CryptoHash function. Therefore, let's diagnose it. Let's go to the CryptoHash.test.js file. To fix this problem, we want to make sure that a new object, or rather a new hash, is generated whenever an object comes in whose properties have changed, even if that object is being passed through a variable and a reference that it itself has not changed. So let's add a new it block that says it produces a unique hash when the properties have changed on an input. Now this is a rather long test case, but this is exactly what we want to enforce. We want to make sure that the hash is unique for any object that has new properties, even if it's the same object. First up in this test, we're going to make, just like in our browser, a foo object. And then we're going to create the original hash for this by calling CryptoHash of foo. Cool. And then let's change foo by setting an a property to a string of a as well. Now, if we pass in foo into the CryptoHash function, we'll expect that this is not equal to the original hash. So in this case, the actual value is a call of CryptoHash and then placing in foo once more. And this should not be equal to our expected value of the original hash. Now, as we save this, go ahead and fire up the test runner on the command line. And once you have the test open, you'll see that this new test is actually failing. And it's because our CryptoHash method still returns the same hash when the passing object reference hasn't changed, even if the properties are different. So here comes the actual solution, and perhaps you've thought of a fix already. But one good option is to stringify each input before it gets sorted in the CryptoHash function itself. So let's go to cryptohash.js. By stringifying all of these inputs, we're going to make sure that if an object's properties have changed, the stringified form is going to represent those changes. So what we can do is that we can map over all of these inputs and then transform the regular inputs an array into an array of all of the stringified items within that original array itself. So this takes a callback, and this callback goes one input at a time. So the new parameter is going to be the input, and the result is going to be a json.stringify of that input itself. Now I'll enlarge this so that way the whole line is visible. But what's going on again is that we're mapping over the inputs and turning all the inner items into their stringified form. As we save this, now we should get past the error where the new properties make it so that the hash is different from the original hash. But there's actually one more thing related that is now failing. Instead of the expected value equaling the SHA-256 hashed output of a string of foo, instead we're receiving something else. And the answer is that now our string also contains these double quotes within them. So we're going to need to visit password generator once more, so that way we can get the value of the string of foo with double quotes surrounding them. So make sure you visit passwordsgenerator.net, SHA-256 hash generator. You can also take a shortcut and paste in this value, but it's nice to see why this is happening. So let's generate a string of foo, including those double quotes. And as you can see, this is the value that was outputting to the console. So we actually want the lowercase version of this. So I'll create a string in the console real quick, containing this value, and then calling to lowercase on this. And then this is the output that we now want to use within the command line. So make sure you have the lowercase version of the SHA-256 hash of a string of foo with those double quotes. And now in the command line, or rather in the project, in the file for the cryptohash.js function, so in cryptohash.test.js, we're going to make sure that the overall output is what we got from lowercasing that output of foo with the double quotes. Now, as we save this, the test suite should be fully green and awesome. We now have a much improved CryptoHash function, and it's enabling our transaction input signature to indeed change when the transaction updates. Cool, so that covers that edge case with the transaction where the actual underlying output map didn't change between updates. Soon enough, we're going to move on to new territory with the cryptocurrency. However, there's still a couple more edge cases to consider when updating transactions. So did you think that just because we solved this issue, we had the whole thing nailed? Psych! I'm only joking. But seriously, this is life in the software engineering world. There's always another bug to squash. But that's what makes engineering so engaging and exciting. Every day, you get to wrap your mind around a different problem and have a fresh start. You're not doing the same mundane task every day. So that's why I love the engineering profession. All right, enough talk about this. Let's get to addressing some immediate edge cases with the update transactions method.